And New York Times bestselling author Mitchell Zuckoff. His latest book is entitled The Secret Gate, a true story of courage and sacrifice during the collapse of Afghanistan. Also here is one of the subjects of the book, former State Department political officer Sam Aronson, who risked his life to evacuate at-risk families from Kabul.
Mitchell, thank you for being with us. Mitchell, this happened with lightning speed. The whole thing happened with lightning speed, leading up to the frenzied withdrawal, and then the chaos that just enveloped the entire country in the days that followed. Talk about how you capture that in this remarkable book.
Thank you, Joe. So, as you say, it was total chaos. We had, remember the scenes of men falling off the wings of airplanes, women handing babies through barbed wire. You had tens of thousands of men and women and children crushing against the walls of the Kabul airport, and all of them desperate to get out because they knew what was coming. The sudden arrival or re-arrival of the Taliban meant that everything that they had enjoyed, all the freedoms they had enjoyed for the past 20 years during the American involvement, were about to end. The women were going to be sort of kept from the streets. Girls were going to be kept from schools. And the people who had cooperated and helped all those years, they were at risk of death. And so everyone felt, we've got to get out. And everyone showed up, tens of thousands of people at the gates to the airport.
Well, and add to that the chaos of ISIS, seeing this as an opportunity, even when we had the Taliban at times working with us to get us out of the country. It was ISIS, of course, who started detonating bombs outside the gate, creating those frenzied scenes that we saw that led to the United States fleeing much more quickly and much more chaotically than anybody would have liked.
That's exactly right. That, into the vacuum flowed the danger. And that came in the form of an ISIS-K bomber at Abbey Gate. And we had the tragic loss of 13 American servicemen and women and 170 or more Afghan men, women, and children.
So, Sam, talk to us, if you will, about your experience over there. You were stationed over there and were right in the middle of that violence and chaos. Tell us a little bit about what you saw.
That's right. So I came over right around the time that the evacuation started, and it was just complete chaos on arrival. The day prior to arriving, the hardest thing I had to deal with was finding a dog sitter for my dog, and then arriving in Kabul, immediately being taught how to hotwire buses in case I needed to get people to safety, keeping flashbang grenades in my pocket, in case we had to fight for our lives. But there were just thousands of Afghan women, men, and children who were seeking safety, and I knew that I had to do more.
So tell us about, did you rescue more than 50 people in a single day? How did you get them to safety? What were those moments like for those that got out, but also for what you could see about those who were left behind?
That's right. So the rules on the ground didn't necessarily match the reality that we were seeing. So, along with some colleagues from, the State Department, from CIA, from military, we had to make the rules fit the situation. So we became aware of this secretive gate on the outskirts of the airport that was, outside of the airport into, beyond a no man's land zone onto a major thoroughfare where there were market stalls, there was a gas station with essentially daily commerce, as you would see in a major city. And we started using that gate to bring people in, bring them back into safety.
So let me ask you, Mitchell, a question that has hung over this just absolute disaster for quite some time was how we got it so wrong. The intel agencies, which, by the way, have gotten just about everything right in the Ukrainian war. But regarding Afghanistan, they had no clue on how quickly the Taliban would seize complete control of the country. How did they get that so wrong?
That's a great question, Joe, and we're still getting the answers to it. But one thing we know is that the expectations for the Afghan army, 300,000 men strong, equipped and trained by the United States, and they dissolved on contact. They didn't have the will to fight and defend their country, and everyone got it wrong. Let's make this clear. It wasn't just the United States. You don't have President Ghani getting on a sudden aircraft out of his own country on August 15th because he realized that the Taliban was about to be at his door. So this was an intelligence failure. It was an operational failure as well. And I think it's because we didn't really understand just how in the countryside, how the Taliban was being viewed and the amount of momentum that they had moving so quickly toward taking Kabul.
And Sam, you of course are a hero in this book, but talk about some of the heroes that you met, some of the heroes that you were able to get to safety.
Yeah.
I worked with a young man named Assad. He was a 21-year-old interpreter for Special Forces, and I met him in the passenger terminal at the airport. He had been manifested for a flight, and I asked him what he was still doing there, and he said he wasn't leaving until he was able to get the rest of his family inside. So when a brief window of opportunity presented itself a few days later, I sent him a message on WhatsApp and said, hey, are you available to help do some interpretation? Little did he know that I'd be asking him to risk his life and leave the airport, go across the street to a gas station, rescue families one by one, bring them back over to me where I could then process them, bring them to safety, and cross that name off my arm where I was keeping track of everything, and move on to the next family and get as many as we could.
Wow, I have chills. The new book is entitled The Secret Gate, a true story of courage and sacrifice during the collapse of Afghanistan. It's officially out tomorrow.